Welcome to Belts, Bumps, and Barbed Wire, a podcast brought to you by DMV Wrestling News at dmwrestlingnews.com. I'm your host, Jeff Quinton, and I'll be interviewing guests from the world of professional wrestling from the Mid-Atlantic region and beyond. Thanks for joining us. Hi, I'm your host, Jeff Quinton. Today I'm speaking with Jonathan Elliott, better known to wrestling fans as The Reason. We're talking about his pro wrestling career, his military service as we head into the Veterans Day weekend, as well as the late Dirty Money Jermaine Robinson, who is being honored at a Virginia Championship Wrestling event in Alexandria this Saturday. Hi, Johnny. Thanks for being with me today.
Thanks for having me, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Appreciate you being on. Just want to thank you for your service.
Pardon.
And first, could you talk about what led you to become a pro wrestler, who your early influences were, and how you got started in your career?
All right, yeah. It's well, I mean, like anybody growing up watching wrestling as a kid, my dad was somewhat into it. Grew up on WrestleMania, watching everybody growing up. Got deeper into it myself in my high school years. Watched a lot of WCW Saturday Night on weekends from freshman year on, ECW, all that stuff. How I actually got into wrestling, I met a guy, and we kind of our senior year together, and we both were wrestling fanatics at the time. We used to argue over the dumbest things, like who was better at this, who was better at that. Probably most fans do. And I actually had signed up to go to the military at 17, so I shipped off when I turned 18 to go to basic, and I had joined the National Guard at the time, Virginia National Guard, the first time. When I came back from training, he had signed up for a wrestling school, a local wrestling school in the area of Loudoun County, Reston, Fairfax area, called Kida Pro. And, he was wrestling. And me being, the cocky, confident guy I was at the time, I was like, well, if he's doing it, I could definitely kill that, right? I thought about looking into it. I didn't sign up until I actually went to Jimmy Z, who was the owner of Kida Pro, had rented his ring out to a actually funny story. The old Mortal Kombat movie, the one that went big in the 90s, the guy that played the black guy with the braids on the beach that fought Liu Kang, he was this like world famous karate fighter. I forget his name at the moment. But he was trying to shop out a TV show to HBO, underground martial arts tournament fighting stuff. And this is actually the first time I actually met Dirty Money. So I went out to the show with them to help, set up the ring, meet everybody, and sold my pitch to why I want to be a pro wrestler. And, when we first got there, I was in pretty good shape at the time. I just came out of basic training, and one of the fighters, we didn't pass, physical. So the guy saw me and came up to me, was like, hey man, you look to fight, I'll give you $100 if you enter my tournament. So I signed up for it, and I fought some tough man fights. I actually won a couple matches to my surprise. But after I got paid, Jimmy Z took my $100. This is down payment for your wrestling training, and that's how that started. But the impressive thing that really made me fall in love with independent wrestling in that moment was during the halftime show. Sanjay Dutt wrestled Dirty Money in like a little intermission show. And this is like the first time those two guys, this is like the beginning of their careers, but Dirty was this like fire plug, and Sanjay was, who he was with the flips and everything. And they went out there, killed the ECW style, balcony diving, suicide dives through the tables. And I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And that's how I got into pro wrestling initially.
If you could talk some more about your pro wrestling career and some of your influences since you've been wrestling. And
Yeah, sure. So, as pro wrestling goes, I lead back to growing up. Obviously, I liked, Macho Man, Bret Hart. I liked my big guy, Sid Vicious, Kevin Nash. I was into different things. Obviously, when the cruiserweights came around, Malenko, Guerrero, Benoit, loved getting into that stuff. As far as like, once I got into wrestling, I understood what it was, I actually got taken under the wing by Sanjay Dutt because the school I was at obviously wasn't that premier of a school. So he took me under his wing and took me to a lot of shows he was on. And I got to kind of watch how he conducted business, how he acted backstage, how he put matches together, and that it allowed me to start working. And if you go back in the day, there's a couple of CW shows you can see me pop up on. There's a couple of Philly shows. There's a couple of Cajun Death shows where I'm on there working as CA Elliott or Johnny King, different elements like that. And I just kind of cut my teeth old school, just going around with a popular guy, getting my spots in and learning from people better than me. As far as my influence for wrestlers after that, I've always leaned more towards the more physical aspect of the art. A lot of Japanese wrestling, watched a lot of Stringo, got into a lot of early school Ring of Honor. So just a lot of that stuff going on between, I'd say, like 2003 to 2008 really influenced my style going forward from there.
And I'm going to change up my original plans now that you've already started talking about Dirty. Could you talk about, you already talked about how you met Dirty, which was one of my questions.
Mhm.
So could you talk about some of the things that you remember from working matches with him and some of your biggest memories of him?
Sure. I mean, well, Dirty was at the beginning of my wrestling training too. I give a lot of my credit to Sanjay, like because I got to like go over his house and watch all his tapes and study and learn that way. But Dirty was the first guy when I actually went to the school, and he was there. There's a couple other people, but he was like that guy that looked like a pro wrestler. He stood out. He carried himself like a pro wrestler. He had that charisma, that aura of a pro wrestler. And, I kind of levitated towards him. And, he taught me the basics, how to lock up, chain wrestling, a lot of stuff like that, kind of just walking me through it. And he gave me a lot of tips about how to really stand out with the little things. Through the years, I always strive to get better and learn from people. And one of my goals is always to have, because, those guys are my friends too, not only my mentors, but like my goal back then was always to like make them proud of me. So I wrestled, I didn't get to wrestle Dirty a lot. I wrestled him here and there, but every time I got in the ring with him, it was special because I learned something. And every time you're in the ring with Dirty, it was an experience. You go out there, he do his best to make you look good, no matter who it was, and then he kind of just, he got out of the way. If you didn't do well, he kind of like, hey man, what was that? It wasn't like stomping. He was like, hey man, what was that? And then if you did well, he kind of like gave you that like that signature smile of his. The last match I actually wrestled him in was a show for a company called Primal Conflict Wrestling that used to operate out of Martinsburg, West Virginia. But they ran a show in Leesburg, Virginia, probably around, say, like 2015, 16, around there. And it was effortless. It was a tag team match. It was me and Logan. We were wrestling as NRG up north at the time, but we were working under our regular names there. And we worked Sanjay and Dirty in a tag match. And it was one of those weird things because when we got into the locker room, we were just kind of like around each other, talking, catching up, cutting up like, people that have known each other forever have. And we had forgot to put the match together. And so we go out into the ring and just, we vibed and we meshed and we just went off of instinct. And it was probably one of the better matches I've had my entire career. So that's one of the memories I always keep of Dirty professionally, is just how much fun and effortless it was to work with.
I know I saw him a lot as a fan in the last couple of years that he was wrestling and made friends with him to some extent. And my daughter really was a big fan of him. And the last show that in Alexandria that I went to was the one last fall. And my daughter was having a bad night. The crowd noise was really bothering her because she's sensitive to noise. And so after it was over, she couldn't decide what she wanted to do. She'd been looking at things at the merch tables earlier in the night. He'd already put his merch up and was getting ready to go, and she had wanted something that he had at his table, and he got his stuff back out at her and just really cheered her up and made her feel important, and for a toy that I bought for like $1, and that I got to hear her make noise with all the way on the drive home back to Baltimore that night. So I just think a lot of him as a person, not just as a wrestler. I talked to him at shows that I went to with Pay Your Dues, which was the last place I saw him wrestle, with MACW, MCW, VCW, were all the places I saw him wrestle. And I just remember him always being upbeat and positive. And as a fan, I think that he's always going to be remembered for that and for always putting on exciting matches. But I really would like to hear more from people that knew him better as a friend outside of the ring as well.
Oh man, and it alludes to that, like that story with you and your daughter. It's one of those things that is a hallmark of his and it's a legacy, because you'll never hear no one will ever tell you a bad story about Dirty Money. There's no one in this business, there's no one that's gone to the shows, has bought a ticket, that can ever say Dirty Money was a bad person, or he had a bad match, or you're not ever going to hear anything negative about that guy. And that's such a hard accomplishment in pro wrestling to have. And he definitely was one of those few people that can wear that proudly.
Yeah, I know. I hear about the bad people every day, and just things that I really don't report on because there's no evidence of them, or I don't want to get into the mud too much. But there's it's so good to hear stories about people who there's nothing bad to be said about in the business, and I think those are the people that need to be focused on more than just the negative.
I agree.
And could you talk about some other matches in your career that you've had that have been memorable?
I mean, I can go through the generations. I mean, there's definitely milestones in my match. When I actually got to work, when I actually got to wrestle Sandy, like, I've been under him for so long. When I actually got to wrestle him at a show out in West Virginia, was actually IWA not Mid South, IWA East Coast under Madman Pondo, and we worked the match out there. And it was one of those things where I go back to it, where I said Michael and pro wrestling was always the main people that helped me get where I was. Proud of their work they put in me, and I got to wrestle Sanjay in that match. We had a pretty decent match. I was pretty proud of that. I would say a CZW. It's hard to remember the matches, but it was the one CZW Cage of Death where there was this Memorial Battle Royal beforehand, and I got to wrestle in it, and I had this special moment with Derek Frazier, who was also really positive, nice guy back then, who was pretty helpful, and we had a couple moments in the ring where, when I think about my wrestling career, I go back to that, and that's my first time well, it wasn't my first time wrestling Philly, but it was my first time wrestling Philly in front of that big of a crowd. So I definitely remember those moments. A lot of my bigger moments come back to when I got out of the Army for my second enlistment, when I actually joined regular Army. When I came out from that, and I joined Shikara as an NRG with Logan, and we had a lot of special moments there because Quack was just like a world class promoter, and we got to wrestle not only the people we got to wrestle, like the caliber of people, like the Orange Cassidy's, the pretty much anyone on AEW we got to wrestle there. Now, Chuck Taylor's, got to go to the UK, wrestle Mustache Mountain, those two guys. One of them they got a WWE. Just really got to learn from people like Eddie Kingston and those type of minds during that time frame. So that whole 2-year period where we were champs at Shikara was really special, just because it was kind of like a nod to us belonging there, but still being able to experience that and feel like we were contributing. So
I know I had Logan on my podcast last year, right before his last match, and he talked about Chikara. If you could just talk about your time wrestling with him at Chikara, or otherwise your times wrestling with him in Virginia.
Yes. I mean, Logan was, he started training kind of at 16. So he was always kind of like, even when I was older, I was probably in my early 20s. And you could tell he had that passion. And, he was still what we consider, a young boy. But he was always, paying attention, respectful, and just kind of being guided. It wasn't until I got out of the Army. I mean, we knew each other, but we weren't super close. But when I got out of the Army, the whole Shakar um, opportunity came out of nowhere for me. He was supposed to go up with some kid from Norfolk that I don't remember. I got a call from Chris Foyer, who wrestles this horror show. And he was like, "Hey, man, Logan's tag partner for the Shakar spot, kind of dropped off. He said, you better go up there with him." I was like, and at that time, I was out the Army. Wrestling was kind of like on my back burner at the time. But, I saw it as opportunity to help Logan get further in what he was looking for. So I was like, yeah, I'll go do it. So we went up to, he came back, picked me up. We drove to Philadelphia that day. We went to a wrestling fun show, met Quackenbush. We didn't even wrestle or anything. We just went to the locker room, introduced ourselves. They gave us our gear and said, "Hey, this is what we want you to do. See you this day." And it was all from there. And it was just one of those situations because coming up in the wrestling area we did, it's like we both grew up in Nova, which is it's a weird place. Well, not I didn't grow up, but that's like my hometown from like high school, senior year on. But like that area, we're so lucky to be in Nova because it's such a diverse area, being outside of the capital, that you get exposed to a lot of different things that a lot of people aren't exposed to, right? So when we went up north to wrestle, Philadelphia, New York, all these side Pennsylvania towns, it was just a big learning experience for me and him. Also the Mets, because me and Logan styles, even to today, were completely different from each other. We thought completely different about things and how we approach things in the ring. But we were able to form that that teamwork and that connection to where it started to kind of like mesh together. And it was just, like I said, it was just a cool learning experience. Me being in the, and for as long as I had, and him being newer, we both kind of were in the same place where it was just like we were learning from these awesome people, and it's getting to be in these matches with, back then people we thought we didn't deserve to be in matches with. But we came pretty close on the road like that, and he's one of my best friends now. And honestly, it's really a shame that he decided to hang it up, because he really is what I see the best talent out of Virginia in like the last decade, if not 2 decades. So, but no, we got pretty close, and he's definitely highlight my career, that tag team.
Well, on my podcast last year, he didn't rule out eventually coming back at some point if he got the itch again.
Well, no one does. He's smart enough to know not to. Wrestling is one of those things where even me, I thought I was done in 2009, and it's one of those things where it creeps back up on you, and you really just need a recharge. So I wouldn't put the kibosh on him never wrestling again either, but I do know that he is focusing on other things and other accomplishments he's trying to achieve. So we'll see. He's smart enough to know not to commit to that fully, though, I guess.
Well, that was the only match I ever got to see him wrestle in person, was last year for his last match, because being in Baltimore, I've never gotten to go to a VCW show down in Norfolk area.
Yep.
And so I've just finally got to go to one in Alexandria, and I'm going again this weekend in Alexandria. So with that segue, could you talk about this weekend's event and the Dirty Money Cup match that you're involved in?
Well, sure. And let me touch on a little base of you saying that whole Alexandria thing, right? So VCW is one of those companies where, it was based around Norfolk a lot, right? And this VCW is a premier company because it cares about production. It cares about how we present to what we present. And we just, Nova Pro was one of those companies where they had Nova. I'm assuming you went to a Nova Pro show once or twice, but, they had that area there for a minute, and they had a little bit of excitement garnered over there, and we just felt that was like a black hole that was missing Nova, like, because even when I was wrestling before, training before Nova Pro would come around, Nova really didn't have any wrestling to go see. You had to go drive to Maryland or Baltimore or Southern Virginia, Norfolk, to see wrestling. And I always thought that Northern Virginia, the DMV area, deserved to have a wrestling company that, to be proud of. So that's why we are having run in Alexandria, and we're happy that it's been received as well as it has been. But going back to the show on November 9th, we really just wanted to, our last show there was the show Dirty got injured on. And it was really, when that kind of stuff happens, it's terrible, right? And Dirty is the kind of guy where he's like, I'll be fine, he went through serious surgery, but he always had that mindset. No one doubted that Dirty would be in a ring again as soon as he was able. So it just really sucks that, fate happened and, things went the wrong way and he's not with us anymore. And I kind of don't want to go back to Alexandria in that building, or we kind of don't want to go back to Alexandria in that building without acknowledging that light that he brought. So, we have the Dirty Money Cup. And it's fitting because it's on our biggest show since DCW's done, since they had Ric Flair. And, we have Nick Nemeth on the show. He's coming. He doesn't do a lot of independent shows. So that's really exciting. So we thought it would be a good idea to make that nod to Dirty, who helped us so much along with Logan on making those Alexandria shows successful, and kind of just put that cherry on top with hopefully this being our biggest show in Alexandria and giving that nod to Dirty about him being the reason, or one of the main reasons where we are there. So, but we have a lot of good matches. We have the Dirty Money Cup, which I'm going to do my best to win. Not everybody else is going to bring their A game. We have that lovely women's match between Erica Lee and Hyena Hera. So I know those girls are going to go out there and kill it. We have a 6-man tag with the Boar, who's been a heavy hitter for VCW the last 2-3 years. I met him out of Chicago. And Tim Spriggs, legit world jiu-jitsu champion, just killing it in pro wrestling right now. He just won the Liberty Lottery back in July. Trying to see where he's going with it. And they're tagging with our new Virginia heavyweight champion, Devontes, who's another guy from up north who's just really been putting in the work, and the fans have been taking well to him in that Norfolk area against the newer team, or the newer kids on the block, I should say, of the delinquents, who are just some, young Josh Fuller and Mikey Banker, who are just, they're an odd team, but they work, and the fans are, into what they do, and it's very interesting. And also that machismo of Asal Esparza, who's been with us for about 1.5 years, who's our Liberty champion, and who just has his own swag when he comes out. And then also that main event of Nick Nemeth, helping us bring that visibility to this show and going against our Monster Rex Lawless, and just seeing how that comes about. So I'm really excited for this show, and I really hope fans enjoy what we bring.
I know I've been really impressed with Devontes when I've seen him wrestle in Delaware and in New Jersey and some other places. And I've seen Tim Spriggs wrestle a lot at MCW, especially like him when he tags with Spencer Slade when they were tag team champions there. They were just a really hard-hitting tag team.
Yeah, legit. Yeah.
Going to move on a little bit to this week. What else is going on this weekend? This weekend is Veterans Day weekend. Could you tell me briefly about your service?
Sure, I can. Well, I'm an Army brat. Both my parents were in the Army. My dad served in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. There has been an Elliott man in every single United States war since Korean War. My uncle has served. My uncle Rudolph, who passed a couple years ago, retired first sergeant. Uncle Barry. We've got a lot of Elliott men that have put their time into the military. And my parents didn't want me to join, but I felt it was something that I had to do. So my first enlistment was into the Virginia National Guard. I was a avionics mechanic for helicopters and electrician. That's where I first got used to that Southern Virginia area. I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina, for basic training. I went to AIT in Fort Eustis outside of Newport News. I did that for about 6 years. I got out. Towards 2010, 11, I felt a change, and everything was going on, and I decided to re-enlist. So I re-enlisted regular Army in 2011. My MOS was changed, so I couldn't go back into it. So I decided to do what both my parents did previously. They both were combat medics in their time in the military. So I reclassed to a 68 Whiskey healthcare specialist combat medic. I went to train in Fort Sam Houston and San Antonio for about 4 months, and then I got stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, and I deployed with the 2nd Brigade Combat Team to Afghanistan for a year in 2011 to 2012. That was a real interesting time. I was lucky enough to not have as many tough times as a lot of people over there at that time did. We did get attacked a couple times. People definitely tried to kill me and my team a couple times, but for the most part, I would say we had it easy. I was part of a medic team that got lended out. So one week I'd be working with convoys going back and forth from Kandahar Air Force Base to our little fob. One week I'd be on a foot patrol team. Another week for a couple months I was on the colonel's personal security detail. So I was basically just tasked to be the colonel's medic. So I got to do a lot of cool things over there. Met a lot of cool people, and I really understood a different way of life. They have gay people, just seeing how they lived. So it gave me a lot of and I lived overseas before, like I said, when my parents were in the military, but it really opened my eyes on like different views and how different people live. We came back 2012. I served for about another year and a half. My time came up, and I decided not to continue. So I came back home, and that was my military service. So.
And could you talk about the impact that your military service has had on your life in general outside of your service itself, as well as your wrestling career and how it has affected your career wrestling?
Well, I think my military upbringing as well as my military training really kind of cemented in the beginning of, I mean, as far as wrestling goes, I just couldn't be when I was training back in 2002, 2001, 2002 area, that generation, it was all about trying to break you. Like we all want you in wrestling, not you and me as a person, but it's like you have to earn your right to be a wrestler. So I think my discipline, my mental um stature that I gained from my military service and my parents' upbringing allowed me to kind of push through adversity. It made training not easy, but I had an easier time than most people that were first introduced to it. I think my first wrestling name was Cocky Asshole because every time they wanted me to try something, I'd do it and I'd be successful at it. And it got to my head a little bit those younger years, but you couldn't tell me I couldn't do anything back then. So it kind of gave me the ability to try and not quit. And those are two very important virtues to have, especially as a pro wrestler. As far as my outstanding life, it's opened up a lot of doors for me. I was in Northern Virginia before COVID hit. I was working at the Department of Health and Human Services as a, personal security, protective security. That was pretty good job. That came from being a veteran and just being a part of a community of veterans is special to me because it's as because you told me you served. It's just you kind of know everyone's different, but there's that respect for each other. When I go to the VA for checkups, it's like talking to friends, or when I'm out and about, it's just that community to where people that I know from my company, I'm still on Facebook with my commander and my first sergeant from then, and it's just that unspoken rule of like, you always have that between each other. Veterans Day means a lot to me because, as you know, I was in a war zone, and some people that I know didn't come back. Some people went out there, and that's what they always said is every person, even when someone tells me they haven't deployed, I still have the same respect for them because every single one of us, we went and signed that paper not knowing what would happen to us. We didn't know if we go over there and get blown up. We didn't know if we get shot. We didn't know what would happen on the other side, and we still went and did it. So there's that respect, and I think everyone that took that oath, raised their hand at MEPS before they went, just deserves to be acknowledged for the price they were willing to pay to keep this country as great as it is.
Thanks for that. That was exactly the kind of message I would like for people to hear. As a veteran myself, and I also know that there are a lot of people in pro wrestling who you might not even think about, especially in independent wrestling, who have served. And I tried to put together a podcast last year with veterans ahead of Veterans Day, and it didn't happen because of some schedule issues that I had, as well as trying to schedule people, and some people don't want to talk about it. And just wonder if there's any sense of camaraderie within the wrestling community among the veterans that's different than just everybody else within the community.
I think the wrestling camaraderie is enough. Like you said, a lot of people don't want to talk about their military service. I'm proud of it. Like I said, it's run through my family for generations. I grew up with two soldiers, so I'm always going to tell people about my military service. I'm proud of it, and I shout it to the moon. But there's some people that it's more personal for. Like there's a lot of people in wrestling that I don't know that I've met, and I found out like years later they're veterans, and it's like, bro, why didn't you say anything? We have a wrestler with us now, Luke Johnson. He's I won't give too much of the information away for security purposes, but he's a freaking officer, like a commanding officer in the Marines, and he's doing this on this, he's chasing dream on the side. So it's one of those things where it's if we find out about it, if I find out about it, I'll show my respect for you 100 more times. But what's known doesn't need to be said, as they say, and some people rather keep it to themselves. So
And the people that I've talked to about it the most is I've talked to in person was Carly Bravo.
yeah,
And he's even got the gimmick on AEW of his tag team as the infantry.
yep.
And then Steve Macklin had some really good things to say in different interviews he's given about his service in the Marine Corps. So I just have really been impressed with what he's had to say, similar to some of the things that you said a while ago. So I think it's really important for somebody to actually say it on behalf of the people who don't want to say it. So, I mean, people just need to think about the fact that people have made these sacrifices. They might not, some of them made the ultimate sacrifice, and that's more for Memorial Day, but it's also for Veterans Day as well, for all the other sacrifices people made. Like you as an Army brat definitely know the sacrifices that your mom and dad made and that everybody in your family has made and that you've made to serve. And I know I was in 6 years in the National Guard. I was an intel analyst, and that was 96 to 2002, 2003. So I never deployed, but I'm just as proud of it as all the people who did deploy. And I have a lot more respect for the people who did deploy and people who did see hostile fire than. It's different, but it's the same. I still consider them my brothers and my sisters. And that's
Anyone deployed will see you as that as well. And if someone comes off with that, father bull crap or anything like that, they're full of it. Everyone, we all like you. Everyone that served, if we know it, that respect is earned. So, thank you for your service.
I was glad to do it. I just wish I could have done it longer. Let's talk about this week. If you could just mention specifically the Dirty Money Cup a little more and who's in it.
Sure. So the Dirty Money Cup of ECW commissioned this thing with this big medallion on it. I think that encapsulates Dirty style and his kind of attitude as far as the Dirty Money character goes. But basically, it was a random tag team cup bowl kind of thing. So it got drawn to where it's going to be Papa Don and Joe Keys versus Bro Keller and Chris Slade. I think that match will be phenomenal. A lot of weird things going on there with Papa Don and Joe Keys. Basically Papa Don took Joe Keys' title from us from a couple months ago, and they had this awkward relationship trying to use each other to get ahead. Bro pretty much is around us here and there, so him and Chris Slade have a pretty good chance of being able to work well. There's no real issues with those. Another team that got drawn was myself and Brandon Scott, who, the director Jerry Stephenson is my guy. And so you got a problem with him, you got a problem with me, and Brandon Scott's got a problem with him. So I kind of have to work with him to get far, but he's definitely not a friend of mine. I will be tagging against the Commander King and the Alex Divine. Alex Divine is a pure athlete. He used to be a gymnastics teacher. He does some pretty crazy stuff in that ring, but he ran into me. I think this is actually it's gonna be a little rough time for him. Desmond King is a wild card because he's Commander King now, and he's not the honorable guy he used to be, and I don't really know what to expect from him. But it's not gonna be an issue. I want to win this, so I'll do what I have to do. We'll figure that out. The winners of those two matches, it'll be a 4-way later on in the night, so that will definitely be some chaos. And the winner of that 4-way will be declared the Dirty Money Cup winner and awarded the Dirty Money Cup medallion by none other than Logan East in a row, who wanted to be a part of this to honor Dirty Money himself. So that's the Dirty Money truck.
Okay, and if you could also talk to me about any of your other appearances you have coming up and where people can find you on social media.
Well, they can find me on Instagram as SoldierJ1. They can find me on Twitter as Hype Rockwell. That's my NRG name. And I really don't wrestle anywhere. My hands are pretty much full here at VCW. I'm getting to that age where I might be slowing down myself. But you can see me at any VCW show. November 9th, we have one December 7th in Norfolk. Time to Destruction. It's kind of like our end of the year show where we kind of blow everything up. And yeah, hopefully if you're listening to this podcast and you're in the DMV, you're with us in Alexandria on November 9th. It's going to be a fun night.
And I'm definitely going to be there. Looking forward to it and looking forward to meeting you.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. I look forward to meeting you too.
Thanks again for joining us on Belts, Bumps, and Barbed Wire. Please join us for our next great episode wherever you get your podcasts. Now for our credits. Host is Jeff Quinton. That's me. Production assistant is Josie Quinton. Producer is Scott English. If you'll please check out DMVWrestlingNews.com every day to get the latest pro wrestling news from the Mid-Atlantic region and beyond, we'd appreciate it. Thanks again.